Welcome, Clark and Perdita, to the Thank Goddess podcast. I'm so honored and grateful to have you join us today. So, for me, you're probably not aware of this, or you won't be aware of this, but when I decided to do this podcast, which was about a year ago, you both were at the top of my list of people that I'd love to invite on the podcast. Just because your book really resonated with me so much. And I feel like our message is so aligned. And yeah, I just didn't have the confidence back then because it was all very new. But I feel like now it's been about a year and this podcast is growing, and I felt like this is the time. So I'm really excited to have you both joining me today. And yeah, for me, the book was just Wow, it just really came to me at a time when I was searching for answers. I grew up with a Catholic background, so very strict Catholic upbringing. And so I grew up with the rosary beads and I grew up praying the Hail Mary. And it was all done through a very different lens to what you speak about in the book. And so when I began later on in life, as I began my spiritual journey, I suppose you call it more of a from a Gnostic point of view, I didn't want to have anything to do with religion because what my path entailed for me was more this reclaiming of the divine feminine. And that's what has been my path. And I just was very resistant to my upbringing and having anything to do with what I related to the church, which I believed was the rosary. And so last year, I received a message, I guess, from one of my guides. And the message was very direct. And the message was, you should do the rosary sometime. And I was so triggered by this. I was like, the rosary? Like, I don't want to do the rosary. No way. And I was really anti receiving that message. And it just kept replaying in my mind, like, why would I receive that? Like the rosary, you know? And it hit me one day and I was like, I wonder if there's more to the rosary than what I know. And then that's what led me to Google. And I don't know what I Googled, but your book came up. And, it was the radical path of the divine feminine hidden in the rosary. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. And I bought your book straight away. And it's just changed everything for me. And now I have this beautiful connection to the rosary. Like I have my beads with me here and I sleep with them every night. And I pray the rosary, and it's just been this such a beautiful reclamation of the rosary. It's more personal to me now, and I'm just so grateful for your work and for putting this information out there because it's not spoken about enough. And I hope that what we speak about today can help other people that have the same kind of questions. So welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Danielle, thank you so much for listening to that message and receiving it. I think she's always talking, she's always holding out her hand, right? But not everyone takes it and not everyone listens. And it means a lot that you did.
Well, there was a lot of resistance at the beginning, but
same with us. And I think I think it's important to say for your listeners that neither Clark nor I was raised Catholic, nor are we Catholic, nor would we even consider ourselves Christian, but we are devotees of the Lady. Yeah. By any name anyone wants to call her.
That's right.
And I think that's where I want to begin because I found, your story really, really interesting, how you didn't have that Catholic background and that connection to the rosary. So I'd love for those people that are listening that haven't read the book, how did you come to the rosary? Because I think that's really healing to hear from someone that doesn't have that background or that tie to the rosary.
Well, here's the thing, your response to the rosary, when Clark first told me he wanted to learn to pray the rosary, I thought, what? You're becoming a Catholic? I married this Buddhist monk. What's going on? And, the way the Rose documents our back and forth with the rosary, but I think it was Clark who first learned to pray it.
So. Yeah. I experimented. I was a Zen Buddhist monk. I left that behind in about 1990. And then I experimented with a very wide variety of spiritual practices. I was very devoted to Zen for like 14 years, from my teenage years on. But then when I left the monastery, I very much needed a different kind of practice. And I was searching for something that I felt would be equal to the times ahead. You know, Perdita and I were already reading about climate change very early on, earlier than it was, you know, even before it was in the news, and species extinction and really searching. And so um, during that time, I was teaching poetry. I was teaching haiku poetry, which I still teach. And I was traveling, and I ended up in Taos, New Mexico, teaching haiku poetry with a friend, Natalie Goldberg. And I saw images of Our Lady of Guadalupe everywhere I went, had no idea who she was. And I found her story and the story of Juan Diego and the Mesoamerican genocide, you know, the mass extinction of animals, and the fact that Our Lady appeared, you know, Tonantzin, the old earth goddess, sort of, you know, repurposed as the Virgin Mary. You know, she just said, sure, you can call me Mary. I'm still here. In the midst of all the sorrow and violence and distress and disease and ecocide, I'm still here. And, you know, take my hand and I'll lead you. So that message really resonated with me. And I didn't really know how to embrace that. The only thing I could connect with the Virgin Mary was the Rosary. And, you know, I had this vast library of spiritual texts. I still have. It never occurred to me that they were all patriarchal. Like literally every single book I had, except one, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which I'd read 3 times without realizing it was about the goddess. That's how fully indoctrinated I was. So I came back. I told Perdita, I said, I gotta, you know, I gotta learn how to pray the rosary. She was shocked, but I did. You know, anybody can learn it. You know, it's a kind of a DIY kind of thing. You just need the diagram and the prayers. You can learn it in an afternoon. So I
You have to
said,
go to a retreat to learn how to meditate. The Rosary, you have an 8-year-old can sit you down and give you everything you need in about two and a half minutes.
In fact, that was the problem with the Rosary for me, because I very much came from that sort of Protestant, you get what you put into it sort of, you know, mindset. Zen is very much like that. I started praying the Rosary, and I was, even after a couple of days, I was getting in such a deep, peaceful, trusting sort of place. I thought, this has to be a placebo. This is like some old Italian or Irish Catholic grandmother practice. This can't be real. So after about a month, I just quit it because I said, I'm just making this up. This can't be happening, right? And then I gave it up for years and years until Perdita asked me to teach her the Rosary, and I did.
And I reached out for the Rosary for different reasons, which is I felt fed up with a lot of those spiritual traditions. I was a young mother, and we were going to a Buddhist monastery with their children when they were first born. And I found that the children weren't welcome. I was expected to keep them all occupied and away from the grown-ups. And then we left and we went to the local Episcopal church. And there I was, an ex-atheist, ex-Buddhist, asked to teach Sunday school and occupy the children in the back room and keep them away serious business the grown-ups were engaged in. And something felt very wrong. The mother was missing. Not only just was the mother missing, but mothers and children were missing from these religious experiences and these religious institutions. And, you know, I was experiencing the radical experience of my own child rearing being the most powerful spiritual experience I'd ever had, with very little support and a lot of overwhelm, a dying mother, young children, money worries, 1,000 other things I've documented. And I needed something to hold on to. I felt alone. And she held out her hand to me and I reached back and took it. And it was so profound, Danielle. I'm sure you had a similar experience, which is, you know, I'd gone to Zen retreats, let go, let go, let go. We're primates. We're apes. And if apes don't learn to hold on, they die. that's what they do. That our hands are meant for holding on. And we're meant to hold on to each other, and we're meant to hold on to her. And so at night, I would put the kids to bed, and I would hold, we'd read our stories and sing our songs. And then I would say the rosary, holding on to my beads. And the kids would play with my hair, saying the rosary with me till they fell asleep. And we all felt cocooned in the lady's arms. And it was pretty radical. And yet I felt very lonely. I thought, there aren't any other ex-atheist, ex-Buddhist, non-Christians praying the rosary.
I wasn't even praying the rosary.
Clark's praying the
I've given
rosary.
it up. I've moved on to other things.
And here I am. I'm just praying the rosary. I can't explain to anybody what I'm doing. Like I'm like, and I'm even scared. Like in America, I don't know if this is true in Australia. The rosary's become very synonymous with Christian, Catholic fundamentalism, and particularly 100%. In the fight against abortion, right? And so to hold rosary beads in public is somehow to align yourselves with institutions I didn't feel any alignment with. And so I would often pray the rosary on my fingers because I didn't want to attract attention in public, but I was always praying it.
Yeah.
And, what I didn't know, what it took Clark and me a long time to begin to understand, was how old, how radical, and how subversive this spiritual tradition is, and how hard the church has worked to take it out of people's hands.
It originally belonged to ordinary people. The rosary originated, the form we have now with the beads originated about 1,000 years ago during the High Middle Ages. And this was a period where Europe was really at the peak of its devotion to the Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary, as she existed in the Middle Ages, very, very different from the vision of her today. She was basically a goddess. These were people very thinly Christian, right, who had a tradition of devotion to the Great Mother that going back thousands of years. They worshipped her by various different names. They had rituals associated with her. Christians came in, and with the Virgin Mary, they said, yeah, we know who she is. And they grafted their old devotions, like weaving crowns of flowers for her head. They grafted those directly onto the Christian version of the Divine Mother. But in the Middle Ages, most of the literature about Mary are miracle stories about people who had some urgent need, often health, finances, physical danger because of war or public or strife,
the usual.
whatever, the usual things, the concerns. And they would go to a statue of the Virgin Mary, often a Black Madonna in one of her shrines, or even to their local village church, and they would pray, the Hail Mary to her in the beginning, just a kind of a devotional mantra, and kiss her statue and maybe do a prostration, and their prayer would be answered. These stories are collected in books. What they have in common is the fact that the Virgin answers their prayers directly with no recourse to God or Jesus. God and Jesus rarely even appear as characters in the story.
It's sometimes hard, I think, as modern people to imagine the culture the rosary comes out of, because it was a pre-literate culture, which means nobody was reading anything. The Bible, nobody had read the Bible. The priest didn't read. Nobody read. It was a folk culture, and it was a folk culture with really old, deep roots. And they've done DNA tests in some of these villages in Europe, and they go back 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8,000 years, even in places in England. They had been devoted to the seasons, to the earth, to the mother. And the mother's name, often statues of Isis and Horus were just refashioned as statues of Mary and Jesus. Yes. And, we can go into all the wild stuff we discovered, such as, the mysteries of the Rosary are more connected to the mysteries of Dionysus than they are the Gospels.
Yeah.
I mean, So if you want the wildest, oldest, witchiest tradition, go look at what your grandmother was doing.
And for those of your viewers who may not be familiar with the Rosary, or specifically with the mysteries of the Rosary, there are 3 sets of 5 mysteries each, right? The joyful mysteries, the sorrowful mysteries, and the glorious mysteries. The joyful mysteries are the mysteries of birth and childhood, right, through adolescence. The sorrowful mysteries are the mysteries of Jesus's arrest, his torture, his crucifixion. And then the glorious mysteries are all about the resurrection and about the ascension of Jesus, the assumption of Mary, and her crowning as Queen of Heaven and Earth. But the 3 basic sets of mysteries are about birth, death, and rebirth. So there's this cycle that basically follows the same pattern we see in nature. And this was hardwired into Christianity from ancient pagan practice going back thousands of years, whereby people did not see themselves as separate from the earth, but one with the rhythms of the earth. Life was eternal because the dead and the living were forever trading places with one another. Ancestors were being born and reborn. People had a sense of being deeply connected to the earth and seeing in the earth the promise of rebirth and redemption.
Danielle, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Left that you were raised in the Catholic Church and you were raised praying the Rosary, and then you came back to it. What was it like to come back to it? What did you discover?
It was very, I feel like it felt like a coming home, it makes sense now why I chose my family and this upbringing, even though it didn't fully align with me at the time and growing up. I can understand how I felt that from the moment I was born, I was kind of taken into the arms of the mother. And even though it might not be through the lens that I see it now, she was there. She was always there and guiding me along my journey. And now it's just felt like this, coming home in a sense, but to truly understand it from more of an empowered lens, and to reclaim that for myself and my own understanding. And I guess even to do this work.
It's so interesting. When we were on book tour for The Way of the Rose, going all around the United States, city after city, we'd always begin asking the same question. We'd say, how many people here have felt called by the mother in some way or another? And everyone's hands would go up.
And we asked people to tell their stories. We've heard amazing stories. Here's one. We were in, I think, Kansas City, and a man came, and we said, "Why are you here?" He said, "Well, I read your book." And I said, "Well, do you pray the Rosary?" He said, "Yeah, you bet." So, "Well, how did you come to it?" He says, "It's the damnedest thing." I was an atheist, diehard atheist Buddhist, okay? And one day he's in an alley behind his house, cleaning up a bunch of trash. He's feeling really irritated because people have spread trash around. And he sees something, it's like a little piece of cardboard stuck behind the fence. And he pulls it out, and it's a postcard with an image of the Virgin Mary. And he has this moment where he goes, it doesn't feel, atheist as he is, he said it didn't feel right to just throw her in the trash. Maybe if it had been a picture of God or Jesus, who knows, maybe he would have, but the Virgin Mary, something about it, couldn't do it. So he took it back to his apartment, sat there for like a week or two. And he looked at it and he said, this doesn't feel right having it just sit on the table like that.
Put a little vase of flowers in front of the picture.
Long story short, you can see where this
and
is going.
There was a candle. Then he started leaving us there in the room with him.
Yeah, then he goes on and he starts asking her things and started praying and everything. And he said, so wow, so that happened. Like, that's what a story. He said, well, yeah, she answers prayers. So just we heard story after story like that, right? People's very personal, heartfelt experiences of conversion, not to a faith in some kind of religious dogma, but a conversion to the belief that the lady is always there and always has been, and that she answers prayers.
Mm. Yeah, I totally relate to that. And just like the little synchronicities and little cards falling out of old documents and diaries, especially, with the upbringing I had. I always had my grandmother giving me archangels and Virgin Mary, like little prayer cards. And sometimes they just come to you at the most perfect moments. And it's like, wow, you can't make this stuff up. It's just so divinely orchestrated. So thank you for sharing all of that. And also, I just want to say, what was coming to mind was just in the book, you explain how the triple goddess, that death, birth, rebirth cycle is hidden even in the Hail Mary prayer, which I had no idea about. And that was just so fascinating to me.
When I realized it, I've been saying the Hail Mary for 10 years by myself with the kids. And one day, it's an incredible prayer. It's the most popular mantra around the world, and it's a mantric prayer. And it will, if you say it, they've begun to do studies. They haven't done as many studies on the Hail Mary as they have meditation, that it actually tones your vagus nerve. There's something about the rhythm of the prayer. But, the traditional prayer is, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us now at the hour of our death. Amen. There it is. But now listen. Hail, maiden, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. And what you're really invoking in that first part of the prayer is the hieroskamos, the sacred marriage, Lord and Lady, God and Goddess. Sometimes you see it as Yab Yum in Tibetan Buddhism, the lovemaking of the God and the Goddess that generates all life.
Medieval people believed that the words, the Lord is with thee, marked the moment of conception. And so when they said the prayer, they were reenacting the moment of divine union.
And for them, it was quite erotic.
It was.
It was not chaste and pure. It was tantra.
The Rosary was a tantric practice.
So it begins there, and then, so Hail Maiden, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among mothers, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. So there she is pregnant. There she is, that full moon, right? We've had the waxing moon, then we have the full moon, the mother pregnant. Holy Crone, Mother of everything, pray for us now and at the hour of our death. And there she's the Kaliak. There she's Hecate. There she's the old mother witch, Baba Yaga, come to take us back into her body. And then we say the prayer again, and she rebirths us, right?
Yeah, it's a wonderful prayer, because it's a cyclical from birth to death to rebirth. And so it's this rehearsal with every repetition of the mantra of the journey of the soul through deep time.
And so you feel the fact that she's holding you through birth, and death, and rebirth over and over again. It's such a powerful prayer. Now, in our community, there are people who adapt the prayer and will say it as the way I just said it to you, or they'll, they definitely leave out the word sinners, which is a more recent addition by the Catholic Church. Many people don't even bother to say God, because who cares, right? but the prayer itself is a fundamental invocation of that triple goddess.
It's so beautiful. Thank you for explaining all of that. I know for myself, it just feels really liberating, particularly from the lens that I was brought up saying it. So I'm sure that many people listening to this, it's like, wow, just opens up so much. So I have a quote from your book that I'd like to read. The rosary is my body, and my body is the body of the world. Your body is one with that body. And in the book, you speak a lot about the importance of the body and how it relates to our connection to the earth. And I particularly love the chapter where you explain touch, and that sense of touch that we have when we pray with the rosary, we feel the beads. And it's one thing to pray with our thoughts and our words, but when we hold the rosary, we're interweaving matter and spirit. We're weaving the tangible and the intangible, which I absolutely love. And I hadn't really thought about until you wrote that in the book. And I feel like within a lot of spirituality and religious dogma, there's this dismissal of the body, and there's even a lot of shame that comes with our bodies, particularly as women. So I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate on what you believe is the importance of the body, particularly from a spiritual lens.
Where to begin?
So we're the species of animal that traumatizes itself. We've hurt each other very badly as civilized human beings, and we continue to do so. And we have a lot of trauma, and we've enacted a lot of trauma on each other. And beings that are traumatized often want to get out of their bodies. They want to disassociate. And one could almost say that most of the world's religions are dissociative events in relationship to human trauma and civilization. The Rosary invites us to reintegrate and come back into our body with the safety of the mother holding us. We're not getting out of this. We're not going to, religions tell us you're going to die and go to heaven and be done with your body. You're going to leave Earth and go to the better place. You're going to, the Buddha's promising you extinction. The Christians are offering you heaven. And what we see in nature, what we know from science, is that nothing goes anywhere. This is where we are. This earth is us. We are born here, we will die here, and we will be reborn here. And that understanding of death, birth, rebirth, not resurrection as a singularity that happens to one being, but resurrection as what happens to every soul.
And to everything in the natural world.
Every single thing is born, dies, and is reborn. Yeah. And if we matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, comes from the word matter, M-A-T-E-R, which is mother. To re-embrace our bodies, the bodies that birthed us and held us, is to reclaim all of that, right? And everything, the animals, our backyard right now, it's summertime here in the US, is filled with fireflies. And those fireflies are very much in their bodies right now. They're looking for love. That's why they're flashing their lights, They're looking for love. It's the great dating scene in our backyard right now. And their prayer is for love. What do they want? They want children. They want more fireflies. They don't want to leave the earth. They want more fireflies.
Everything wants more of itself. I wrote a haiku one time. The thimbleweed, too small to make anything but more thimbleweed, right? Tiny little weed, but it just gives all of its being. It just tries as hard as it can, drinking in the water, taking the sunlight to make more thimbleweed. Right?
And I think to privilege celibacy over eros, to privilege, right? This is why we're living in an ecocidal death cult, right? That imagines that nature doesn't want purity, it wants mess and delight.
I mean, a lot of religions are trying to, if you look at classical religious texts, Buddhist, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, there is an attempt to transcend or get away from the drama of birth and death. But if you look at the world we live in, it's about nothing but birth, death, and rebirth, right? We see all around us things dying and coming back into being. And everything that eats is eaten. right? That's the basic ecological equation. Human beings at a certain point in our history, they look at that equation and they go, no, not me. Everything but me. And that's the moment at which we begin, what Perdita talked, we begin to dissociate from our bodies and from the earth. Suddenly the earth and the natural cycles that govern all things on earth are our enemy. And so we can only experience unhappiness. And a lot of religious experiences, is designed to sort of court unhappiness and to sort of transcend you, to try to propel you into a transcendent modality where you begin to imagine or to yearn for an escape from the very thing, the very place that you belong, the very place that most offers healing and a feeling of an experience of solace. And so it's so interesting to me how you find this as a universal impulse among the larger, more organized religions. In indigenous religions, you don't necessarily find that.
Mm.
Indigenous, you find a close connection to the cycles of nature and an identification with them and a feeling of belonging to those rhythms, existing within them as them. But in the large scale religions, there's always this impulse to transcend the mother, get away from her.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think more and more people are kind of waking up to that now, how we've been so dissociated and returning to that indigenous wisdom or to the mother. I have another quote for you. So it's not hard to fulfill your heart's desires, but it's hard to get people to admit them, awaken to them, and believe in them. And in the book, the lady speaks about the importance of praying our heart's desires. And I feel in a lot of spiritual circles again that we hear things that, desire is the root of all suffering. And I'm curious to hear from you, why is it hard to admit our heart's desires, awaken them, and believe in them? And why do you think it's so important right now to connect to our heart's desires?
Well, this is everything, and I'm going to let Clark start, but I'll just bring us back to those fireflies. Thank goodness they want to make more fireflies.
Well, you quoted the, the first noble truth of Buddhism, right? The idea that all of Buddhism sort of hangs on or hinges on, which is this idea that life is suffering, right? Actually, what the Buddha said is something closer to life involves suffering, or life involves hardship or struggle or feelings of dissatisfaction, whatever. But this idea, it doesn't make sense unless because what that says is basically the world is bad, you need to get out of it, right? And just escape from it. I mean, classical Buddhism teaches that the goal of Buddhism is a state of extinguishment or extinction, or being literally blown out. It is to escape from the wheel of birth and death, to enter a realm called nirvana that lies beyond birth and death, outside of the ecology. It's like someplace in remote space or something like that, right? Where there's no dirt, there's no defilement, but there's no dirt and no flowers, there's no life, right? So, but more rightly, I think what the Buddha was trying to get at and trying to express was that the desires of civilization lead to suffering, that the desire for civilization has built into it at its most foundational level suffering. Human beings will suffer the moment they try to create civilization, because civilization or empire is always at enmity with the earth. It always makes the earth an enemy.
But let me bring it more home, because I think this is the heart's desire. What do you want to ask the lady for? My children, I have 2 children, they're grown-ups, they're 30 and 27, but almost always they call me when they need something. They need to know how to make the chicken dish. They need help with a car payment. They're having love troubles, my favorite. And, they call me up because they need something. And I'm delighted to be able to answer their need. It is our need that puts us in relationship to the mother. I think what Clark is talking about is that civilizations, institutions, whether they're religious or whatever, have tried to tell us what to want. They've tried to tell us what we should want. You should want a good job. You shouldn't want this. This is bad. This is good, right? But the lady says, like a good mother, like a fairy godmother in a fairy tale, no, what do you want? And here's the thing, we have a community now of over 30,000 people around the world, many in Australia, by the way. We have a lot of wonderful, we even have an Australian meeting. And we come together to pray the Rosary with one agenda, to pray for our heart's desire and to support others in doing the same. But just asking the question, what do I want, sets us against civilization's agenda. Most people, almost everyone who comes, what do they want? What do people want? Healing, love, meaningful work, a car, health, a car to drive to get to the meaningful work, food for their children, a home, belonging, friendship. Yeah. And these desires are so much create who we are, that when we begin to know what we want, we begin to know who we are. Mm. And that's what our mother wants for us. Our mother wants us to be who we already are. She doesn't want us to be who civilization or the culture tells us to be. She wants us to be who we really are, to come into bloom.
You know, there's a conflation between civilization and culture that afflicts all of us. For instance, one of the things we hear constantly from people today is, you know, you talk about, in your books, you talk about the collapse of civilization, and the fact that this is inevitable. And it's that people get panicked when they hear that, because they say, that's it for us. It's over. Because they believe that civilization is all we are. And in fact, civilization is only a few thousand years old. Human culture, which are the very desires, the wholesome, you know, most basic human desires for good things, right? This is as old as we are. And we've had art, we've had music, we've had storytelling, we've had good food. We've had all these things for much, much, much longer than that.
One of the things you see when people become devoted to the divine feminine again and to the lady is an outpouring of creativity. Yeah. We see this in our group. You see it in the Middle Ages and the Arthurian legends. Like suddenly it's like, oh, the art is getting really good. The music's getting good. You know,
stories are getting
good. Everybody's sort of having a good time. You know what I mean? Like, oh, everyone's dancing again, right? Like the lady wants pleasure. Why would she be against pleasure?
Yeah. Why would she be against pleasure? Why would she be against the body? Why would the earth be against bodies and pleasure? When these are the very forces that drive life on earth.
It's so true, everything you've just spoken about, and it makes sense when you like just put it that way. Like, why wouldn't she want that? Why, you know, why wouldn't we be allowed to experience our heart's joy and our desires, and to experience the fullness and richness of life if all of nature is doing it, right? And we are an extension of that. So now,
yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, what? Go look outside. What are the trees praying for? What are the mountains praying for? The rivers, the rain. When we start to pray for our heart's desire, we begin to know the answers to those questions.
Well, that leads me to what I wanted to ask you next, which is around the power of prayer. And I love how in the book you describe prayer as one ceaseless, universal activity, and how you say, you know, everything is in this constant prayer, even our organs, like our heartbeat and our lungs breathing, and the rainfall and the trees. And when we take up the rosary, we are joining with that ceaseless universal activity. And you mentioned before just how, we're living at this time now where things seem a bit uncertain for our future. And, there seems to be a lot of fear of what's to come. We know that the world we've created is not sustainable. And so, how do you think prayer can aid us in moving forward, and why is it so important now in the evolution of our planet?
Well, the desires of civilization, there's no limit to them, right? I mean, the Buddha said that desires are inexhaustible. What he meant was the desires of civilization are inexhaustible and can't be satisfied. So it'll always consume more. It will always trend towards destruction and ecocide. The desires of the heart are very, very different. They can be satisfied. They aren't out of scale with our environment. They aren't out of scale with the planet. They fit the planet pretty perfectly, human desires, right? And they were sustainable for hundreds of thousands of years. So it can help us because it makes us less violent. It satisfies us from within. And so we're not constantly craving more and more and more of everything, right? Which is destroying the planet.
We live in an economy of money, right? That's, and the prayer of the monetary economy is, may I win the lottery. May I, may I be a millionaire, then I can be happy, right? When I get enough money, I'll be happy. And it turns out apparently that's not true. Like those people who do get $1 million unexpectedly are always miserable because they don't know what they want. And we have forgotten the magic of the economy of prayer, which our ancestors knew. They prayed for everything. They prayed for food, they prayed for shelter, they prayed for healing, they prayed for love, right? My grandmother, I'll never forget my father, who was an atheist, and a modern man, a doctor, with mother's superstitious Catholicism, that old, uneducated, stupid woman. And he said, I can't even believe it. My sister got pneumonia and she made us all sit around the bed and pray the rosary as if that would, cure of pneumonia. But here's the thing. When they were praying for his sister who had pneumonia and was spiking the fever, there were no antibiotics invented yet. There was no Advil or Tylenol. There was also no money in that family to go even get a doctor. All my grandmother had was prayer. And my father's sister survived. And she lived to 96.
Yeah, she was the last of them.
So prayer works. Prayer, which is not to say I wouldn't get the antibiotics or the Advil if, in that situation, but I'd add in prayer. When we started to learn a lot about prayer, it's when our daughter got really sick and the doctors couldn't tell us what was the matter. And then we lost our jobs and we had no money and we had no help and we had no answers. And all we had were a handful of beads in our hand.
Yeah.
And we started to learn that could guide us through the labyrinth of life.
Yeah.
It would show us what to do. And 13 years later, we find ourselves, bank account isn't particularly better, but we're doing work.
Better.
It's a little better. It's a little better. But we're doing work we love. Our family is close and happy. We have extraordinary friends. Life is rich and full of so many answered prayers. And, people wonder what to do about climate change, right? What should I do? That's what, oh my God, what am I going to do? How about we just ask ourselves what we really, really want? And then see what Mother tells us to do.
I mean, people ask, well, human beings don't live in scale or in harmony with their environment, but the animals and plants seem to do that effortlessly. How do they do it? They follow their heart's desire. The plants follow their heart's desire. They obey the laws of their basic nature. They yearn for what they need, and the earth, the mother, gives it to them. It's the same with the animals. They're able to live in harmony with the planet and in the scale with the planet because their desires are in scale with their environment. And because they're not amplified, they're not multiplied, there's nothing artificial about them. They aren't being told what to desire, they just know it and they seek it. And the mother gives them what they need. And so they're able to live in a sustainable relationship with their environment.
Mhm.
But, we can do the same. This is not rocket science. Rosary.
Yeah, the rosary. Yeah, I just hear so much hope in that.
Begin to know that she does answer your prayers, and she does. We have a newsletter that goes out from our organization, and we have miracle stories we share each month. And at the end of every one of our circles, our Zoom circles, people share their miracle stories every day. Every day, people have miracle stories to share. And you hear one person's miracle story, and you hear another's. And we're not in charge of the planet. She is.
Yeah. And one miracle begets another. The original rosary manuals from the Middle Ages, you know what they were? They were just miracle stories. And they would have a little bit about the rosary. I mean, they would say, so pray the rosary, went and asked the lady answered the prayer, the miracle happens, right? And then there would be like one page that would say, here's the Hail Mary, here are a few pictures, do it yourself, make it work for you, right? It's very, very sort of low key and sort of hands off in terms of technique and stuff like that for a lot of different kinds of techniques. But the core of it was going to the lady, asking for something and then thanking her when you got it. We had somebody show up at the shrine of Our Lady of Woodstock, which is at the end of our driveway, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she was just sort of wandering around the shrine and everything. And I walked by and I said, can I help you? She said, well, yeah, I'm not sure why I'm here. And I said, well, why? Did you hear about the shrine? She said, yeah, I kind of know about the shrine. And I said, well, why are you here? She said, I don't know why I'm here. I'm Jewish. I said, okay, that's fine. You can be Jewish. You can be anything. He said, well, I'm not even sure I believe in prayer. I mean, I don't want to say the rosary. I said, okay. So I said, do you have something you need? She says, do I? I've got a new job in the city. They promised me a salary that they're not delivering. The job description was all wrong. It's a terrible thing. I don't like living in the city. I want to move back up here. I said, so you have things you want? She said, yeah. I said, they seem like reasonable things. She said, yeah, I really need them. And I pointed to the statue of Our Lady of Woodstock and said, ask her for what you want. And when you get it, come back and say thank you. She said, that's it? I said, that's it. You can learn the rosary later if you want. It's very simple.
So simple. So there is one delusion at the bottom of human experience today, the belief that you live in a motherless, comfortless world. This is the source of all other delusions and the cause of all unhappiness. I feel like that is just so powerful, that statement. I had to kind of really stop and pause when I read that in the book. And what do you believe is possible if humanity truly remembered and restored their connection with the Great Mother once again?
I think she has boundless love and better ideas than human beings about how to get us back on track and reintegrate us. And we so want as a species to be in charge of everything, in control, right? We want to run the show. We want to know what the plan is. We want to describe it. We want to get there. We want a 5-year plan. Blah, 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 blah. And part of praying the rosary is learning to say, and it's a mystery religion, I don't know. Mama's going to show me how we get there. Sometimes I pray for something and how when you plug into Google Maps and you get like 4 or 5 different ways you can get to your destination? Well, she has about 10,000 different ways to get us to our destination. And if our destination is to live in harmony on the earth again, I think she's going to get us there. I don't know how long that's going to take.
Our Lady said at one point, fairly early on, when we were struggling, she said, I don't remember what we said to her, but she said in response, I don't deal in SOSs, like the SOS meaning the distress sign. And we panicked because we thought, that's all we've got is SOS and urgent, please rescue me, like the flashing the signals from the ship, SOS in Morse code. And she laughed and she said, no, I don't deal in single outcome scenarios. I don't deal in single outcome scenarios. You have an idea of how you think your prayer can be answered. I have 1,000 ideas for how your prayer can be answered. 1,000 different ways your prayer can be answered. Not one.
She's very creative.
Yeah, and playful. And unpredictable.
And prayer is very playful. It's a dance. She's mischievous. I've learned to say, something awful will happen. I go, wait a minute, how is this an answer to my prayer? And often it is.
Yeah.
Often she's keeping me from going somewhere, And it takes, we pray in community because it's helpful. Prayer is an art that we have lost. And together we can help each other recover that lost art. It's good to have some friends when you pray.
Yeah. And I think it's just, ultimately, it's just, like you said, giving up that perceived sense of control that we think we have of life, and just, there's so much relief in that, right? Just putting it down. And particularly since the Rosary has come back into my life, since reading your book, I feel my whole nervous system relaxing. So when I carry the Rosary beads, I feel the weight being lifted from my shoulders. Like, I don't need to carry this. I don't have to have all the solutions. I don't have to have it all figured out.
I think it's such a relief to know that we don't have to figure it out. There's an AA slogan, one day at a time, right? But Our Lady is basically saying, one step at a time, one footstep at a time. Just look at it. Our job is to sort of ask and look at our feet. She'll take care of the rest. She's the trail guide.
That's so beautiful. So this conversation has been amazing. We're just about to wrap up. I have one final question for you both, and this is something that I ask all my guests on the podcast. So you are aware that you're on the Thank Goddess podcast. So this podcast is about reclaiming goddess consciousness within ourselves and humanity at large. And the way that I explain it is very much about what we've spoken about today, and reclaiming that connection that we have to the mother, to the lady, whatever word or whatever name you have for her. And my final question to you is, when do you feel most connected to the goddess or goddess consciousness or the lady?
I think when I'm outdoors, and I think for me, part of me says, like, I always feel connected to her, right? But I need to get out in the woods. And, I'm working on a new book, and I climb this mountain near my house. I live in the Catskill Mountains, and it's officially called Mount Guardian. But lately I've taken to calling her my Yaya Mountain. And I literally talk to her as I hike. And I really do experience her as there. She really shows up. She always shows up for me, but there. Clark, I think, experiences her like right beside him like this.
Well, yeah, I do. And she's always there. So, but there are, obviously, when we talk to her, she's really right there and talking with us. And so I definitely feel her presence then. But I think on just a sort of more ordinary sort of level, for me, it's when I'm walking, and especially at night. Since I was a child, I've loved to walk in the middle of the night, and I'll often go out walking in near perfect darkness, there's always enough starlight or just ambient light to once your eyes get adjusted to see. And I'll often, sing like the Hail Mary in Latin while I'm walking along. And I think something about the darkness really uh, has always, uh, made me feel her closeness. It's like the darkness. I wrote a book called Waking Up to the Dark about my experiences walking at night. And in one of those chapters, I talk about how the darkness really fits the body like a glove. Like it's on every surface and every sinew. It hugs every shadow. And so it's like a full contact sport being in the darkness with Our Lady. She's just all around, she's touching every atom. And I just love that feeling. I always have.
Beautiful. Thank you both for sharing. So before we wrap up, do you have any offers or any events or anything that you want to share with our audience, or where can people find you if they're wanting to connect with you further?
I should say that are very committed, as well as loving the Lady, to thinking about what it means to be devoted to her in a post-patriarchal world. Our next book that we're working on right now is called Circles Not Lines, Spiritual Community Beyond Patriarchy. And so we had this really wild feral fellowship to which everyone is invited. And everything we do is free. We have no advertising of anything, including our own books, much to the horror of our publisher. Felony. We don't have any levels or programs or workshops or initiations. No. It's just everybody's welcome. And what we offer is we offer rosary circles for everybody. They're completely free for people to come and pray the rosary and meet other people from around the world praying for their heart's desire.
We have face-to-face meetings in certain places,
including Adelaide.
Yeah, and more starting every day. We also have, I'd say around 10 Zoom meetings a day in various places around the world, in different time zones, where people can come together and pray the rosary together.
And we're sort of committed to creating small gardens of faith for people to get some relief from this worlds of fear that we're stuck in right now. So you can learn about that at wayoftherose.org. It's our website. It's got lots of stuff on it, but it has a calendar with daily meetings. It also can tell you how to, we wrote a book about praying the rosary, but we don't want everything about how to pray the rosary is there for free too. Yeah. So you can, we want to make it all as accessible for people as possible.
There are also the messages from Our Lady of Woodstock, many of which you read tonight. They're included in the book, but all the messages are on the website and people can read them.
The lady who is appearing here in Woodstock offers a message on the 16th of every month. And we have a newsletter where we send that out to people. People can sign up for free. And we have a lovely team of people who, for free, put the great little newsletter together of experiences.
And we also
miracle
have
stories.
A Facebook group called The Way of the Rose, and a 54-day novena group that's part of that, where people can join us in praying for their heart's desire. We go on the traditional 54-day cycle. One prayer, 2 moons, Perdita calls it. It's about the 2 moons sort of fitting neatly inside of it. And we pray the rosary, a complete rosary every 3 days, different sets of mysteries.
So we have a lot of different ways for some people. And once a year, on June 16th of every year, in honor of the apparition of Our Lady of Woodstock, we invite everyone from around the world to come and celebrate and devotion to the Lady. At our house, we had over 100 people this year, and we just got through that. We're just beginning to recover from it. It's really wild. And we even had a young man came who's been studying the devotional dances to the Black Madonna, and who taught us to dance the tarantella in devotion to the
Wow.
And children are not in the back room at this event.
No, they're front and center.
They're front and center.
In fact,
they're in charge.
In fact, they're in charge of the annual washing of the Lady at the shrine. Yeah, run that whole event.
So it's very family friendly, and child friendly.
Amazing. And I'll include all of your links that you've shared in the show notes so our listeners can find you and hopefully sign up to your newsletter, get the book, join the Rosary circles. I am just so appreciative to the both of you for this work that you're doing and just this extensive offering that you have and to reconnect us to Our Lady. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and sharing all of your wisdom. And thank you for all the gifts that you are providing humanity at this time. So thank you.
Danielle, for all you're doing for her and the service you're giving to her. Thank you.